Her knuckles rapped against my door at midnight, each desperate knock shattering the silence. And when I opened it, my widowed neighbor stood trembling in her pajamas, tears streaming down her face. The secret she was about to confess would change everything I thought I knew about the perfect couple next door. The air hung thick with humidity that summer night on Maplewood Lane. Outside my window, crickets chirped their endless symphony while sweat beaded on my neck. I'd been alone on my couch, half watching a muted baseball game, when those frantic knocks cut through the stillness like gunshots. Through the peephole, I saw her salise illuminated by the weak yellow porch light. When I swung the door open, my stomach dropped. Her auburn hair fell in disarray around her shoulders. Her thin cardigan barely covered her pajama top. But it was her eyes that froze me wide, red-rimmed and filled with a raw desperation I'd never seen before. Celeste. My voice came out. As a whisper, my heart hammered against my ribs. "What's wrong? You okay?" I'm sorry," she stammered, her voice breaking. "It's so late, ... I didn't know where else to go." My throat tightened as I ushered her inside. Her skin felt cold despite the warm night, and I could feel tremors running through her body as my hand guided her to the couch. My mind raced with possibilities. Was she hurt? Had someone broken in? I hadn't seen her this close in months, not since Adrian's funeral. The vibrant woman who once brought me welcome to thaw neighborhood brownies now looked hollowed out, like grief had carved away at her from the inside. "I can't sleep," she whispered, clutching the throw blanket I'd draped around her shoulders. "I haven't slept in days." A tear slid down her cheek. "Every time I close my eyes, I relive that night, ... The night, Adrian, ... My chest tightened with dread. Whatever brought her to my door at midnight wasn't a simple bad dream or neighborhood concern. No, the way her hands shook, the way she couldn't meet my eyes, this was something deeper, darker. "Everyone thinks they know what happened," she continued, barely audible. "But they don't. I never told anyone the whole truth of that night." Her next words would change everything between us forever. "I'm just an average guy trying to rebuild my life on Maplewood Lane, the quiet suburban. Cul-de-sac seemed like the perfect place to heal after Jessica tore my heart out last year. She'd left a void that echoed through my empty apartment each night, her absence a wound that wouldn't close. Moving here was supposed to be my fresh start, a place where nobody knew my story or pitied. The man who'd been left at the altar 3 weeks. Before the wedding, my daily routine became predictable by design. Wake up at 6:30, coffee while answering emails, commute to the design agency downtown, return home to microwave dinner, and fall asleep to whatever game played on TV. Weekends meant yard work and occasional trips to the hardware store. Nothing exciting, but that was the point. I needed boring. Boring felt safe. The neighbors mostly kept to themselves, which suited me fine, except for Adrian and Celeste Morgan and the gray house across the driveway. From the day I moved in, they stood out, the couple who actually made an effort. "You look like you could use these," Celeste had said that first day, peering at my door with a plate of brownies, her smile brightening the dreary, moving day. She had warm eyes that crinkled at the corners when she laughed. Adrian stood beside her, tall and broad-shouldered, with an easy grin and firm handshake. "Welcome to the neighborhood," he'd said. "Let me know if you need help assembling furniture or whatever." He had that confident bearing of someone used to being relied upon. Over those first few months, they became fixtures in my new life. Celeste would wave from her garden, dirt smudged on her cheek as she tended her roses. Adrian would invite me over when he grilled on weekends. No man should eat alone on a Saturday, he'd insist, handing me a beer. Their porch lights stayed on late into evenings when they sat outside talking, their laughter carrying across the quiet street. I remember thinking how rare it seemed a couple so genuinely happy together after what must have been at least a decade of marriage. The way Adrian's hand would rest protectively on the small of Celeste's back, how she'd lean into him when they walked. The casual intimacy of people who'd built a life together. Brick by brick, then came that rainy spring night 3 months ago. I was falling asleep on the couch when blue and red lights splashed across my living room walls. Through the blinds, I saw police cars in the Morgans' driveway, officers at their door, Celeste collapsing to her knees on the porch. Adrian's car had gone off Alley Road around midnight. The impact killed him instantly. The neighborhood rallied around Celeste in those first weeks. Casseroles appeared on her doorstep. Women from down the street organized a rotating schedule to check on her. I helped with lawn care and taking out her trash, bins, small things that suddenly became mountains when you're drowning in grief. But as weeks passed, the casseroles stopped coming. The check-ins grew less frequent. People returned to their lives while Celeste remained frozen in that terrible moment. The transformation was stark. The woman who once sang while watering her garden now barely left the house. Her roses withered. The porch swing where she and Adrian spent evenings sat empty, creaking in the breeze like a metronome counting meaningless time. Sometimes I'd glimpse her collecting mail, moving like she was underwater. Her clothes hung loose, her skin pale. She noticed me watching. She'd offer a ghost of her former smile before retreating back inside. The light in her eyes had gone out along with Adrian's life. I wanted to help, but didn't know how. What do you say to someone whose world has collapsed? My own heartbreak felt trivial compared to hers, so I kept my distance, offering only practical help and respecting her space until tonight. Now, Celeste sat shivering on my couch despite the summer heat, her fingers twisting anxiously in her lap. I knelt before her, trying to process what she'd seen. Just said that the truth about Adrian's death wasn't what everyone believed. I've been living a lie, she whispered, meeting my eyes directly for the first time in months. Her voice strengthened with resolve, despite the tears streaming down her face. Everyone thinks they know what happened that night. It's the police report, the obituary, the sympathetic neighbors bringing food. It's all based on a story I let them believe. She drew a shuddering breath, her shoulders hunched forward as if preparing for a blow. I can't carry it alone anymore, she said, the words hanging between us in the dim light. If I don't tell someone, I think it might kill me too. I reached for her cold hands, steadying them between mine. I'm here, I promised. Celeste, you can tell me. Eyes closed briefly, gathering strength. When she looked at me again, I saw both fear and relief warring on her face. Our marriage, ... double quotes, she began, then faltered. After a moment's struggle, she tried again. Adrian wasn't the man everyone thought he was. It didn't start out bad, Celeste said, her voice steadier now, as if finally speaking the truth gave her strength. We were happy at first, truly happy. He was charming, attentive. Everyone thought we were perfect together. She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders, creating a cocoon. After his second deployment, things changed. He came back. It's different, distant. The nightmares started. He'd wake up shouting, drenched in sweat. Her gaze drifted to the darkened window. I tried to help him, suggested therapy, but he refused. Said he could handle it himself. The baseball game continued silently on my TV, the players moving like ghosts across the screen. I reached over and switched it off, plunging us into near darkness. Only the small lamp in the corner cast any light. Now, the drinking started next, she continued. Just beer at first, then whiskey. He said it helped him sleep. I believed him because I wanted to because I loved him. My throat tightened as her story unfolded. This wasn't the Adrian Morgan I knew of, a guy who helped me fix my leaking sprinkler system and joked about the baseball standings. When did he first hurt you? I asked, my voice barely audible. Celeste's eyes met mine, surprised by my directness. She hesitated, then answered, 8 years ago. We argued about something, stupid bills or dinner plans. I don't even remember. He'd been drinking all afternoon. When I turned to walk away, he grabbed my arm and ... she mimicked a violent twist. I had bruises for weeks. My stomach knotted as anger flared inside me. I thought of her always wearing long sleeves, even in summer heat. He cried afterward, she said, begged forgiveness, promised it would never happen again. Hey, and I believed him because that's what you do when you love someone. You believe they can change. Her voice trailed off, and we sat in weighted silence. The ticking of my wall clock seemed to grow louder, counting the seconds of this confession. But it happened. Again, I prompted gently. Celeste nodded, her gaze fixed on her hands. And again, always followed by apologies, flowers, promises. The cycle became our normal. I got good at hiding marks with makeup, at explaining away the occasional black eye or split lip with clumsy accidents. She paused, swallowing hard. You know what the worst part was? How he could switch between two people. Public Adrian charming, helpful, everyone's friend. Then private Adrian, the one only I knew. The cricket chorus outside intensified as if responding to her pain. Through my window, distant lightning flashed, illuminating her face for a brief second. Nobody suspected, she whispered. Nobody. Not even his closest friends. He was so careful to keep that side of himself hidden. And I helped him hide it because I was ashamed, because I thought it reflected on me somehow, that I wasn't enough. That I triggered his anger. Her words hung in the air between us. I thought of all the neighborhood gatherings where they'd appeared so happy. His arm draped possessively around her shoulders. You must think I'm pathetic, she said, a bitter edge to her voice. Staying with someone who hurt me. No, I said firmly, surprising myself with the emotion in my voice. I think you're incredibly brave, both for enduring what you did and for telling me now. The corner of her mouth twitched in what might have been a sad smile. I tried leaving once, about 4 years ago, she continued. Packed a bag while he was at work. My sister was going to pick me up. Her voice dropped. He came home early. Found the suitcase. She fell silent, and I waited, dread building in my chest. 3 broken ribs, she finally said, her hand unconsciously moving to her side. A concussion. He told the ER we'd been in a car accident. And I nodded along with his story because I was terrified of what would happen if I didn't. Lightning flashed again, closer this time. In the momentary brightness, I saw tears sliding down her cheeks. My hands clenched into fists at my sides, rage building toward a man I could no longer confront. Why are you telling me this now? Asked softly. After all this time, Celeste looked up, her eyes shining with tears and something else, determination. Because of what happened the night he died? Her voice was barely a whisper. Nobody knows the truth. Not the police, not the neighbors, not his family. She stood suddenly, pacing to the window. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark glass. That night, ... double quotes, she took a deep breath. We'd been drinking since noon. Accused me of flirting with Ryan from across the street because I'd stopped to chat while getting the mail. I remembered Ryan, the accountant. With 3 young kids who could barely make eye contact with any woman, let alone flirt. It was absurd, she continued. But he worked himself into a rage over it, started throwing things, called me horrible names, and then she turned from the window, her face half in shadow. and then I finally snapped. After all those years of taking it, of making excuses, of hiding, I screamed back at him, told him I was done, that I was leaving for good this time. Thunder rumbled outside, perfectly timed with her words. I held my breath, sensing we were approaching the crux of her confession. He went completely still, she said. That frightened me more than his yelling. He just stared at me. Then he punched through our kitchen door. She demonstrated the motion, her fist cutting through air. He told me if I tried to leave, I would regret it for the rest of my life. She hugged herself tightly, as if trying to hold her body together. I thought, he might kill me that night. I really did, the look in his eyes. She shuddered. I ran to the bedroom and started throwing clothes into a bag. That's when I heard the front door slam. His car engine roared in the driveway. The room fell completely silent. Even the crickets seemed to pause. 3 hours later, the police were at my door. She looked at me, her eyes haunted. Everyone thinks it was just a tragic accident. Bad weather, slippery roads. Nobody knows he was drunk, enraged, driving because I'd finally stood up for myself. My heart pounded as I understood what she was confessing. I lied to the police, she whispered. I told them he went out for a drive to clear his head after a mild disagreement. I didn't mention the alcohol, the fight, his threats. I let them write it up as a simple accident. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. Why? I asked, though I thought I knew. She lowered her hands slowly, partly for him. Despite everything, I couldn't bear for people to remember him that way. Partly from I was afraid of what people would think, that they'd blame me for pushing him over the edge that night. And partly because, double quotes, her voice broke. Because deep down, I felt responsible if I hadn't threatened to leave. I crossed the room to her then, gently taking her by the shoulders. Listen to me, I said, my voice low and urgent. His death was not your fault. His choices were his own. You deserved to be safe, to be free from fear. Standing up for yourself was not wrong. Celeste looked up at me, her eyes searching mine for truth. The wall clock ticked loudly in the silence between us. There's more, she whispered. The night Adrian died, Celeste's voice faltered. She moved back to the couch, sinking down as if her legs could no longer support her. I need to tell you everything. I sat beside her, careful to leave space between us. The storm outside was growing stronger, rain now pattering against the windows. After he left, I was terrified he'd come back. I put a chair against the bedroom door and sat there holding my phone, ready to call 911. Her fingers twisted in her lap. Part of me was relieved he was gone. I even started looking up women's shelters on my phone. She paused, drawing a shaky breath. When the doorbell rang hours later, I nearly jumped out of my skin. I was sure it was him, ready to make good on his threats, but it was 2 police officers standing in the rain. I watched a tear trace down her cheek as she relived the moment. They asked if I was Mrs. Morgan, then told me there had been an accident on Valley Road, that Adrian's car had hit a tree at high speed. Her voice became mechanical, as if reciting facts about someone else's life. They said death was instantaneous, that he likely didn't suffer. Lightning flashed, followed almost immediately by a crack of thunder that made us both jump. The storm was directly overhead now. The female officer asked if Adrian had been upset when he left the house. If we'd had an argument, Celeste's eyes met mine. It was my chance to tell the truth, say yes, he was drunk and violent and threatening me. But instead, she closed her eyes. Instead, I told them we'd had a small disagreement, nothing serious, that he often took drives to clear his head. I said I had no idea he'd been drinking. Her voice cracked. I lied through my teeth while standing in my own living room with a bruise forming on my arm from where he'd grabbed me. You were protecting yourself, I said softly. She shook her head. I was protecting his memory, making sure everyone remembered the public Adrian, not the private one. And now I'm trapped in that lie. At the funeral, people kept telling me what a wonderful man he was. His buddies from the service talked about his loyalty and courage. His mother sobbed on my shoulder. She looked at me with anguished eyes. Do you know what that's like? To stand there accepting condolences for a man who terrorized you? To nod and agree when people say what a tragic loss it is. The rain intensified, drumming against the roof. The worst part is, ... Double quotes, her voice dropped to a whisper. Part of me felt relieved when they told me he was gone. What kind of monster feels relief at her husband's death? A human one, I answered immediately. A person who suffered and deserved to be safe. She shook her head again, unconvinced. After the funeral, I kept expecting to feel free, but instead, I feel more trapped than ever. Trapped by the guilt, by the lie, by the weight of it all. Reached for her hand, and this time, she let me take it. I wake up in the middle of the night, convinced I killed him. She confessed, her voice breaking. If I hadn't threatened to leave that night, he wouldn't have been driving angry. He wouldn't have crashed. Celeste, I said firmly, squeezing her hand. Listen to me. You did not kill Adrian. His choices killed him. His decision to drink, his decision to drive. His decision to threaten and hurt you for years. Her tears fell freely now. Look at me, I insisted, gently. She raised her eyes to mine. Adrian made his choices long before that night. You were trying to survive, to protect yourself. That's not wrong. That will never be wrong. A sob escaped her, and I moved closer, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. I killed him, she gasped between sobs. I as good as killed him. I whispered, pulling her against my chest. No, you didn't. She collapsed against me then, years of pent-up grief and guilt pouring out in gut-wrenching sobs. I held her tightly, one hand cradling the back of her head as she cried into my shoulder. My own eyes burned with unshed tears for her pain, for what she'd endured alone, for the years stolen from her. I've got you, I murmured into her hair. You're safe now. I've got you. Time seemed to suspend as I held her. Storm raged outside, mirroring the emotional tempest within my living room. Her tears soaked through my shirt, her body trembling with each sob. I stroked her hair gently, letting her purge the poison she'd carried for so long. Gradually, her crying subsided, replaced by occasional hiccups and shuddering breaths. Still, I didn't let go, and she made no move to pull away. The weight of her against my chest felt right somehow, like she belonged there. Thank you, she whispered eventually, her voice hoarse from crying. For listening, for not judging me. You have nothing to be judged for, I assured her. Nothing. She pulled back slightly to look at me, her face tear-stained, but somehow lighter, as if unburdened. I've never told anyone before. Not my sister, not my friends, no one. I'm honored you trusted me, I said softly. And I promise you, Celeste, you're not alone in this anymore. A small, genuine smile flickered across her lips, the first real smile I'd seen from her in months. It transformed her face, offering a glimpse of the woman who existed before tragedy and abuse had dimmed her light. I'm so tired, she whispered. Her eyelids growing heavy, Kay's emotional exhaustion was claiming her. Rest, I said, adjusting the throw pillow beside me. You're safe here. She hesitated only briefly before settling against me, her head on my shoulder. Within minutes, her breathing deepened and evened out as sleep finally claimed her. I remained awake, holding her, listening to the storm gradually move away. My mind replayed her story, filling in gaps in what I thought I knew about the Morgans. The perfect couple next door had been an illusion, a facade maintained at terrible cost. As the first pale light of dawn filtered through my windows, I looked down at Celeste's sleeping form. In sleep, the worry lines on her forehead had smoothed out. She looked peaceful, perhaps truly at peace for the first time in years. Something shifted inside me as I watched her. A protective instinct, yes, but something more, something deeper. I realized with startling clarity that I cared for this woman not just as a neighbor or friend, but in a way that made my heart ache. I wanted to help her heal, to see her smile again, to watch her step into the light of a life without fear. The revelation both frightened and exhilarated me. After my own heartbreak, I'd convinced myself I wasn't ready to care about anyone again. Yet here I was, drawn to this brave, resilient woman who had trusted me with her darkest truth. Outside, birds began their morning songs as the storm clouds dispersed. A new day was beginning. For Celeste, for both of us perhaps, something else was beginning to dot in the weeks that followed that stormy night. Celeste and I developed a routine that felt as natural as breathing. Most evenings after work, I'd bring dinner to her place or she'd come to mine. We didn't need elaborate conversations. Sometimes we just sat reading in comfortable silence, or watched movies with our shoulders barely touching. The change in her was gradual but unmistakable. Color returned to her cheeks. She started tending her neglected garden again, coaxing her roses back to life. Her laugh, something I'd rarely heard before, occasionally broke through during our time together, surprising us both with its brightness. "I slept through the night yesterday," she told me one evening as we washed dishes side by side in her kitchen. "First time in ... I can't even remember how long." I smiled, passing her a wet plate to dry. "That's progress." "It is," she agreed, her eyes meeting mine briefly before darting away. Having someone who knows everything, who I don't have to pretend with, helps more than I can say. I noticed she'd stopped wearing her wedding ring. She didn't mention it, and I didn't ask. But the absence of that gold band seemed significant, a quiet declaration of freedom. One Sunday afternoon, we worked together in her garden. The July sun beat down as we trimmed back overgrown bushes and planted new flowers. Watching Celeste on her knees in the dirt, focused on creating beauty again, filled me with a warmth that had nothing to do with the summer heat. "Hand me those pruning shears," she asked, pointing to the tools beside me. I reached for them just as she leaned over to steady a branch. Our faces ended up inches apart, her breath warm against my cheek. Time seemed to slow. Her eyes widened slightly, dropping briefly to my lips before meeting my gaze again. My heart hammered in my chest. The scent of her shampoo, something floral and light, mingled with the garden smells around us. I could feel heat rising in my face that had nothing to do with the sun overhead. For a moment, I thought we might kiss. I had been wanting to for weeks. But at the last second, Celeste drew back with a nervous laugh, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Thanks," she said, taking the shears and turning quickly back to the rosebush. Her hands trembled slightly as she worked. That almost moment lingered between us, unacknowledged but impossible to ignore. We continued our gardening in silence, both pretending nothing had happened, though everything had changed. Later that evening, sitting on her porch watching fireflies appear in the twilight, she finally addressed it. "I'm scared, Elias," she said softly, not looking at me. "Of what?" I asked, though I knew. She sighed, wrapping her arms around herself, despite the warm evening, of feeling this way again. of caring for someone. After everything with Adrian, I swore I'd never put myself in that position again. I nodded, giving her space to continue. And there's this guilt, she whispered. Like I'm betraying him somehow. Even knowing what he did to me, even after everything. Part of me still feels like his widow. Like I shouldn't be having these feelings for. She stopped, not finishing the sentence. For me, supplied gently. Her eyes met mine, vulnerable and honest. Yes, for you. My heart swelled at her admission. The first time either of us had spoken aloud about the connection growing between us. I think, I said carefully, that healing isn't linear. That you can feel guilt and attraction at the same time. That you can honor the good memories while acknowledging the bad ones. She considered this, her fingers absently tracing patterns on the porch swing. What are you afraid of? She asked after a moment. It was my turn to be honest. I'm afraid of rushing you, of pushing for something you're not ready for. After my fiancé left me last year, I thought I was done with relationships. Then you knocked on my door that night, and everything changed. Surprise flickered across her face. Never told me about your fiancé, I shrugged. It seemed trivial compared to what you were going through. It's not trivial, she insisted, reaching for my hand. Her touch sent warmth spreading up my arm. Your pain matters too, Elias. We sat like that, hands linked, as darkness fell completely. Around us, neither of us pushed for more, but something had shifted between us, an acknowledgement of feelings that could no longer be ignored. In public, we remained careful. To the neighbors, we were just friends, sharing grief and recovery. Neither of us was ready for whispers about the widow moving on too soon. But in private, our connection deepened with each passing day. One evening, as I was leaving her house after dinner, she walked me to the door. Her hand caught mine before I could reach for the doorknob. Thank you, she said simply. For what? Her eyes shimmered in the hallway light. For helping me remember who I am. Who I was before all this. I squeezed her hand gently. You did that? Yourself, Celeste. I just witnessed it. She shook her head, a small smile playing at her lips. You did more than witness. You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. The air between us felt charged with possibility. We stood on the threshold of something new, both hesitant to take the final step across. Good night, Celeste, I said softly, releasing her hand. Good night, Elias, she replied, watching as I walked across the driveway to my own door. With each day that passed, the invisible line between friendship and something more blurred further. We were dancing around the inevitable, both feeling it, neither quite ready to name it. But we were moving toward it slowly, carefully, with eyes wide open. A few weeks later, one quiet night, Celeste and I sat side by side on my couch, watching an old movie. The same couch where she'd first confessed her truth to me months before. So much had changed since then. The air between us felt different, now charged with unspoken feelings, with possibilities neither of us had dared to name. When the credits rolled, I moved to switch off the TV, but Celeste caught my hand. Her touch sent electricity up my arm. Elias, she said softly, her voice steady despite the vulnerability in her eyes. I need to tell you something. I turned to face her fully, my heart racing. I'm listening. She took a deep breath, gathering courage these past months with you. They've been everything to me. You helped me find myself again when I thought that person was gone forever. The lamp cast a warm glow across her face, highlighting the new confidence there. Gone was the haunted woman who had appeared on my doorstep that stormy night. You mean everything to me too, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Have you ever felt your life pivot in a single moment? When everything that came before suddenly feels like preparation for what's about to happen. I'm still healing, she continued, her fingers intertwining with mine. There are still days when the guilt creeps back. Days when I question if I deserve happiness after everything that happened. You deserve every happiness, I assured her. A small smile lifted the corners of her mouth. That's what I'm starting to believe, because of you. She reached up, her hand soft against my cheek. The touch was tentative, yet sure, like someone testing ice before committing their weight. I'm scared, she admitted, her voice barely audible. But I'm more afraid of not taking this chance, of letting fear steal more years from my life. Free hand covered hers against my face. Whatever pace you need, Celeste. There's no rush. I know, she whispered. That's why I trust this. Trust you. Time suspended as we gazed at each other, balanced on the edge of something profound. Then, slowly, deliberately, she leaned forward until her lips met mine in a kiss. So gentle it nearly broke my heart. The contact was brief, a question more than a declaration. When she pulled back slightly, I could see tears shimmering in her eyes, not tears of sadness, but of release, of permission to feel joy again. This time I leaned in, cupping her face between my hands. Our second kiss deepened, years of loneliness dissolving between us. Her hands gripped my shirt, pulling me closer as if afraid I might disappear. When we finally parted, breathless, I rested my forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that for so long, I confessed. She laughed softly, the sound like music. Me too. I just needed time to be brave enough. You're the bravest person I know, I told her, and meant it. She nestled against my chest, fitting perfectly in my arms, as if she belonged there. Perhaps she always had. What happens now? She asked, her voice both hopeful and uncertain. I kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her hair. Whatever we want to happen, one day at a time. If you've ever found love in an unexpected place, drop a heart in the comments. Does healing through connection resonate with your own experience? I never thought I'd feel this way again, Celeste murmured against my shirt. Never thought I'd be allowed to. I tilted her chin up gently, meeting her gaze. You're allowed happiness, Celeste. We both are. Her smile, radiant and genuine, was like watching the sun break through storm clouds. Have you ever witnessed someone reclaim their joy after trauma? Tag someone who helped you through your darkest times. As we held each other in the quiet of my living room, I marveled at how life's most beautiful moments often emerge from its most painful chapters, from grief to healing, from isolation to connection, from fear to love. What would tomorrow bring for us? A relationship built on honesty and healing. Would the neighbors talk? Would her guilt return? Would my old fears resurface? Those questions could wait. For now, it was enough to hold her close, to feel her heart beat against mine. Steady and strong. Subscribe for the next chapter in our journey. Can two broken people build something beautiful together, or will the shadows of the past return to haunt them? As our lips met once more in the lamplight, one certainty filled my heart. After everything we'd survived separately and together, we deserved this chance at happiness. And we were brave enough to take it.